Hi everyone, my name is Shishir. I'm in Radha's company today. Radha, her love for putting words into thoughts and into paper started very early when she was in advertising. Subsequently, she started writing articles for various magazines. Finally came the blockbuster, which was her book, The Cult of Luxury Brands, which became a bestseller. And I guess that then enthused her to write something more personal, which is on her father, on FTII, and all the bureaucratic shenanigans that happened during that period of time. So Radha, first of all, when did this thought occur to you? When your dad was around, or after you lay your hands on the material which fell into your lap?
Very much the latter. In fact, I like to say that I did not go looking for this book. This book came looking for me. So my story is that my father passed away. His name was Jagat Murari. And about 8-10 years after that, my mother called me to Pune, where they had a home. And she wanted help in clearing out his papers. So I went. There were 3 big Godrej cupboards full of papers. He was unusual in that he wrote in his diary pretty much from the time when he was a young student going to the USA pre-independence to study cinema, and that's when he started journaling. And he kept on till almost a year of his passing. So there was a lot of stuff. He also kept all kinds of other papers. There were notes of his classes where he taught direction at FTII in the beginning and all through his career there. There were boxes and boxes of photographs. And it was at that point, and to be honest, Shishir, even at that point, after looking at the material, the thought came to me, but I was overawed. Would I be able to do this? And so I spent some time reading through it. I did a ton of interviews, more than 100, with his students, with his colleagues, sort of to get other viewpoints into the story. And then it took me about 3 years to commit fully to it. And here it is, the book after that.
So according to me, from what I've read of the book, there are 3 parts to it. There is about FTII, then there is about your dad. The second part obviously is very personal to you. And the third is how FTII got derailed because of the bureaucratic shenanigans. So in your opinion, which was the aspect of the book which made your pen move much faster with a lot more passion?
It was certainly part 1 and 2. They don't come in that order, let me clarify. The whole book covers all of that. But what fascinated me about this subject was that, well, I have a question for you guys before that. When you hear the word FTII, what names come to your mind? What filmmakers do you see in your head? Can you yell out a few names?
Subhash Ghai.
Yeah. Yes, Subhash Ghai.
Nasiruddin Shah.
Nasiruddin Shah, yes. Satish Shah. Said Mirza, yes. Jaya. What did you say?
Jaya Bahadur.
Yes, Jaya Baduri, and then later Jaya Bachchan. Yes.
Irfan Khan.
Irfan Khan acted in a lot of diploma films at the institute, but he didn't do the acting course. But he is often referred to as an FTII person. Okay, so there were all of these. There is Girish Kasarwalli from right here from Bengaluru, who made amazing art films and has won more than 14 national awards. There's Shatrughan Sinha. There's Asrani, who unfortunately passed away recently. There's Vidhu Vinod Chopra. There's Om Puri, Zarina Wahab. There are lesser known names to the public. like K.K. Mahajan, who was a cinematographer, who has shaped the way you and I look at pictures and visuals. There's Kuldeep Sood, who was a very, very prolific sound designer. There's Renu Saluja, who brought about a new way of editing. So there are just tons and tons of people. So that was the aspect which fascinated me the most, because these were people which Jagat Murari and FTII created. He joined the institute in '61, right after it opened, and he built it up over a decade. And that was a period when many of these people came out. And to answer your question, what made my pen work faster, it was this, it was trying to uncover what is it about this place, and what was my father's secret formula for creating legions of outstanding filmmakers. 1 year, next year, the year after, in every department of cinema, whether it's editing, whether it's direction, whether it's acting, and it went on. You can have a few flukes, but how do you do it consistently, year upon year? And that's what really I have tried to unscramble and put on paper.
And the fact that he created not one, but 3 or more institutions means obviously he had a template which worked for him. The film festivals of India, FTII, the National Archives.
Yes.
So, while doing this, you explained in the book how a startup really works. It's not just about what Mr. Murari did for those 3 institutions, but there's a template. Why startups work, why companies work, that's in the book. Now, where did you fathom this from, and what was the feedback you got from the people who went through this process of getting created?
Yeah. Well, my first thought is we are both from management, so we are always looking for what is the management angle, what is it about startups. And yes, all of these were startups. In fact, India, the country itself, was a startup. All this was happening just a few years after independence, and the FTII was a startup within that, which meant that there was no model to follow. It was the first time ever a film school was happening. And as he says, there were a couple of other institutions that my father started at that time. One was the National Film Archive of India, which started originally on the campus of the FTII, and it played a role in exposing students to international cinema, because if you are, the objective of the FTII was to bring about a new kind of cinema and a new kind of filmmaker. And if you have to do that, part of it is to show films from all over the world. And while you and I can see it with a click on our phone, at that time it was on celluloid. It was about getting them from outside, which meant foreign exchange. It was about storing them. These films were literally flammable, and it was about one film would be this high, a stack of boxes, and it was about screening them, all of which was part of what the National Film Archive did. And of course, the third one, which is the Film Festival Directorate, which he did later in the 70s, was one more startup. And after that, we had these film festivals, which happened every year. So does that...
So take us through, you interviewed people and did a lot of research. Amongst the people that you interviewed, who did you get the impression that they were enthusiastic about going back to those days and remembering experiences with Mr. Murari and with FTII? And who were the people who were a lot more critical and not as forgiving of their experiences there?
Okay. Well, I would say most of them were in the first category. For all of them almost, it was a going back to that period of time when they were young, they were learning to become filmmakers. And for all of them, it was, well, this is strange as an interviewer, but it was a very emotional experience. When they explored with me what it was back then. For example, Adur Gopalakrishnan. It sounds strange to say he's a student because he was well in his 80s with this shock of white hair and an absolute delight to talk to. And but funnily enough, when many of them talk, I become a surrogate for my father, which in itself seems strange. There was one who touched my feet, and I was like, he was so much older than me, and I was like completely moved and sobbing at the end of it. But those were the kind of experiences these interviews were. They talked about my father, and one of the things I learned is that he really nurtured them as filmmakers. He got them to look upon each as special, to help them find their voice, and to use that voice to make a better India, because this was that period of India when we were still building our nation. There were also, the Film Institute is known for strikes, and there were a couple of them at his time. In fact, the pattern of strikes started then. That's a long, complicated story, and I'm sure you'll find it in the book. But to give a brief idea, there were more agendas than what you saw. The students, poor things, were just the front, and they were puppets, whereas the puppet masters were elsewhere. Anyhow, that set a trend. And I spoke to some of the strikers as well. And here they were in two camps. There were one set who had had time to reflect on what had happened then. And that's what makes this book really authentic and interesting. They were willing to name names, and they were willing to talk about what happened. And then there was a second bunch of people who were frozen in time and saw what they had done as the right thing to do, and had not and would not talk about or would sidestep any difficult questions that came up around the strike. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it leads to another question. So, in true Bollywood style, your book has got at least three distinct villains. One professor at FTII.
Yes.
One student at FTII, and one minister during the emergency. So, between these characters, did you get to interview the first two? Because I know the minister doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, there were a couple of ministers. I did interview one minister. So, although he said he did not remember anything, he sidestepped almost every question. But no, the professor was no more. He had already passed.
I see.
But I did go and meet the family. And I have to qualify all this that there was a lot of love. These were people who were family friends, and or if he was a student, my father had taught him. So there was a lot of interaction and a relationship. Things went awry at some other point, and for a variety of other reasons. So yes, I was able to interview the student. He was distinctly in the second camp. He was dead sure that what he had done was the right thing, and he went on to become a teacher at the school, and the tradition of strikes got set in even more and has bothered the institute right up to present times.
The book is obviously very personal to you, unlike your first book, which became a bestseller. So while writing this book, what were the moments that you felt, no, I shouldn't put this, it's too personal? What did it take out of you emotionally to write something which is not far away from your heart?
Well, I've done my best to write even things which perhaps as a daughter I should not have written, but I've gone into all the messy parts.
You have been objective, that's for sure.
Yes. I've been very aware that I can be, called, this could be called a daughter's version. So to that extent, I've tried to make it more objective. I've tried to go into the good and the bad. I have tried to quote his words and his stories from him, as well as stories that have come from other parts and from other people to make it more objective. And what was, well, I guess one way to answer your question is that the moments that were very, very difficult for him, there was one particular Gherao where he was locked up, and I think his life was at risk, and there was no one who was willing to let him out. Those were really, really tough parts to write. It was like there were days when I would write one sentence and that's it, and couldn't get another word out, until at some point I decided I have to distance myself. I've got to do this, and imagine him as just a character in a story. Sort of cut that bond for a few pages and write it. And that's what I did. And it took maybe just one chapter, or maybe a few thousand words. Took maybe a couple of weeks to write. But that's what finally happened.
How did your mother and brothers react to your book?
Well, my mother unfortunately passed away just 3 months ago. She did read part of the manuscript, but then she was unwell. And I have a beautiful story from Penguin. And when she was in the ICU, I reached out to them and I said, can you make one book for her? And they did. So it was very emotional.
How nice.
Yeah.
And your brothers?
My brothers have, two of them have read it, one has not read it. So they loved it. They loved it. They're cool with it. Whenever I talk about it, they add so many more layers to it. I was a young girl. I was, the first time my father was there, I was from age 2 to age 12. Whereas my brother, the older one, was a teenager, so he knew a lot more. So he would always add some more color to it. My youngest brother was even younger, so he just loves the book, and he sees it as a family treasure.
And so far, what's the feedback that you've got on the book? What are the aspects that readers have commented on?
Shishir, that's hard to tell. He's a reader. Why don't you tell me, what did you think about the book?
Well, I found it interesting that a part of India, a time in India, was being written about, which showed how the country was, absolutely at rock bottom in terms of finances, institutions, processes, people, lack of training, and people like Mr. Murari in one field and others in different fields were busy creating foundations for what India was going to turn out to be. So that was an aspect which I think the book brings out clearly. The second is, as you mentioned, and you devoted a separate chapter to that, is what was the template which made sure that institutions which are started with shortage of budget, lack of trained manpower, go ahead and succeed. So to me that's interesting, and the flow that you maintained keeps one going without wanting to put the book down. That's my experience of it. Coming to the next question, what next? You've written 2 books now, and you've obviously tasted blood. So something personal, something brand related?
I am at a crossroad, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure what the next book will be. I'm toying with a few ideas. I wrote about luxury brands before this. The writing is very different. It's more about, more if I might say, more like writing essays. With a biography, it's a narrative, and it's about sustaining that over a whole book. So that was a whole learning experience, and to be able to do it, there's a different kind of thrill in that, a nasha, if I might use the word. And I'm wondering whether to take it a step forward and work more in the narrative space. So stay tuned.
So on this book, one last question before we go to the crowd. After the book came out, any regret that you didn't realize while writing and it occurred to you later, or people spoke about it and you regret having put it in the book?
Honestly, no. No, I don't think so. There were many drafts. We've been through a process of, the first time I wrote, the first draft was about twice the size of this. So there was a lot of cutting and culling that went into it. So no, my answer is no.
Good, good.
I stand by it.
So we have 5 minutes now. Would anybody have questions for Radha?
Do you have questions from the crowd?
Or questions on the book which Radha can answer for you?
My question is regarding the strikes at the FTII. So right from the first strike to the recent strikes, what was the first reason and how it got changed over a period of time?
Okay. The first strikes were the battles that were being fought were fought at two levels. Typically, the students posed the problem as something to do with creative freedom, which is fair enough. In fact, the institute was known, and that is what the purpose was, to give them a lot of creative freedom. But anyway, it was posed as that. And then there were other layers. It was a government institution, and it was aiming at excellence. And it had accomplished it in the first 10 years, and that's when one of the strikes happens. And how do you keep, I think at the teacher level, the question was, how do you keep on delivering excellence in a government setup when many of them haven't signed up to work so hard or to do that, and where there's complete job safety? You cannot remove anyone. You cannot say, I'll bring this one in or that one in. So that was at the teacher level. There were other aspects which were at higher up at the ministerial levels, where there were political agendas as to what should be the shape of this school. And in some ways, it was the political agendas and the teachers' agendas which finally shaped the strikes. And the students were led, and they went along. They were given a cause to fight for, and they went for that. So that was how it played out.
Before the next question, any anecdotes that your dad told you about all the people that he mentioned, from Mao Zedong to and others, that stays in your mind and was interesting for others to share, which they may not know or may not be even in the book?
Well, one of the incidents that stays in my mind is Jaya Bhaduri's audition. So they had like an American Idol style. They would go from city to city, and there would be hundreds and later thousands of people who would apply for, especially the acting course at that time. And some would get an audition, and some would not. And her audition, she was given 2 pieces to do. One was given by the Institute, and the second, she was free to do whatever she wanted. And it was the second piece which stayed in my father's mind forever. And she stood up and she carried a dead baby in her arms. And here was a panel of experts who were judging the audition. And she went from person to person with that dead baby. And it was her expressions as a grieving mother, without a word. And she silently walked that distance. And it seems it was so compelling. And she was a young girl herself. But what she delivered in terms of acting was so stunning that even 50 years later, he would narrate that. In fact, I've talked to other people. Kamini Kaushal was on that panel, and she helped select Jaya. And I asked her about it, and she narrated exactly the same story to me. I talked to Roshan Taneja, who was the legendary acting teacher, and he had the same story to tell as well. So it's, she just hit the ball out of the park.
You talked about your dad's journals. How detailed were they, and did it also have like prosaic things like today Radha went to school, and you could just describe a little bit about the journals and how much of that went into the book?
Well, it was a mix of both. I think one of the best ways to tell you is that he went to USC to study. This is pre-independence. This is the British Indian government, or British time Indian government, that sent him and a few others to USC, which houses an amazing cinema school even to this date. And his first journal entry is at Calcutta. It's at the docks. And he describes this scene of a crowded place, and he is boarding a US troop ship. That was the only mode of transport in 1945 when World War II had just ended. And there were 3,000 US soldiers on that ship along with these Indian students. And he describes it in great detail. And that is pretty much the first journal entry. Then towards the end of his life, he goes back to USC and he finds one elderly professor who's still there. And they spend 3 days together. And there I know exactly again what all they did on those 3 days, including the pizza that he ate, including the hotel room that they stayed in, including, apparently this professor had a camera collection. He had all kinds of old cameras, and he describes them. All of that is not in my book. The first one is, but to give you an idea, that was the level of detail that was there. And yes, there are that take Radha to the doctor today for her vaccination or something. That's there too. So yes.
We've run out of time, unfortunately, but post that you can talk to her one-on-one. She's available. Thank you very much, Radha. And this is the book for those who want to know more. Thank you.